Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I know you have been anticipating Scott coming back on my channel, and Scott always finds time, even if sometimes we are a little bit late, but I'm very grateful that Scott always finds time for my channel and you guys and the live streams. Before we start, the link to scottritter.com is down below the video. Everything is there, all the interviews, all the books, the coming event that I will ask Scott before we end the live stream, if he can tell us what it will be. And also the book that we collaborated on. This is like the most exciting. Every time I connect with Scott, I'm so happy to show this book. It's a little bit on markdown on Amazon. You can still get it. It's not, you see, it's not too big. It supports my work, Scott's work. It means a lot to me, guys, if you get it. And if you have purchased already, you can also buy from the publisher. Please make sure to leave the review. Even if you don't write it, just click the number of stars that you believe it deserves. I hope 5. So one more thing. Since we are approaching the presidential elections in the United States, and I have been running my YouTube channel for 4 years now, I know how the censorship is on steroids, especially in this time. So to everyone who is watching, make sure that you hit the like button and you subscribe, because it helps me a lot and it's also helping with the shadow banning, you know, so it's good to know. Welcome back, Scott. That's all from me. And I start with the question. So let's start with United States today, because to be honest, I have to say I'm becoming a little bit sentimental now. I've spent there quite a long time, big part of my life, and I know that we are approaching a very, very important time in the history of United States. But before I will ask about the election, that will be the second question, I want to start with this. Military-industrial complex. It's a phrase originally coined by US President Dwight Eisenhower to describe the relationship between the military and the defense industry that supplies it with weapons, equipment, and services. I'm very happy to connect with you because you know a lot about United States military, and I would like to learn more. 2 questions I will have here. First one is, as we have Brics meetings in Kazan, today is number 3, and President Putin is talking about the dollarization of the world economy. I would like to ask you, Scott, what that de-dollarization mean for the US military complex?
Oh, let's start by you got to forgive me. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice might give out every now and then. But I think we have to take a step back. You know, what we're talking about here when we speak of Brics is more than just economic issues and such. We're talking about a global transformation that's taking place of historic proportions. This is the modern day equivalent of the Bretton Woods Accords. Bretton Woods, of course, being the meeting at the end of World War II that set the stage for what we call the rules-based international order. That is the system that the United States imposed on the rest of the world to guarantee American hegemony, American control, American dominance. And the dollar is linked to that. Bretton Woods is, created the the conditions that led to the dollar becoming the global reserve currency, set up the SWIFT bank, the SWIFT system of communications for transactions. Basically, dollar dominance is linked to the rules-based international order. Brics is about the end of the rules-based international order. It's about a transformation away from the American-led singularity to a global system of consensus, multilateral consensus building. This is the end of an era. This is the end of American dominance. And first of all, as an American who's been watching the effect of the military-industrial complex on our American democracy, I find this almost liberating because this is an exciting time to be an American. A lot of people are in the dumps. The dollar's crashing. American hegemony is going. This is a chance for America to redefine itself. From the ashes sometimes comes something better. And we have failed as a nation. We are a failed nation. We tried to impose a model of American dominance on the world. It hasn't worked. As Vladimir Putin said, it wasn't the world that walked away from the dollar. It was the dollar that made it impossible for the world to do business in the dollar. How can you do business in a dollar that every time you touch a dollar, you get sanctioned? It doesn't work that way. For Russia was forbidden from touching the dollar. So what do you want Russia to do? Die? What do you want the rest of the world to do? Just roll over and play dead? No. So, Brics is, a natural manifestation of the rejection of this American domination. The rules-based international order represented a transition away from empire, and colonialism to this American hegemony or neo-colonialism. Because if you think about the relationship we're talking about between America and the world, it's a neo-colonial relationship. America isn't a colonizer, but we behave as a colonizer with economic domination. We seek to impose our will on the world using this system, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, all these other systems that we put in place, the rules-based international order, is all designed to have the world service America's needs. And the way that America has decided, because this could have worked, there is something called the benevolent dictatorship. I'm not a fan of it because I believe in democracy, but there are people out there who would say, well, wait a minute, if America provided for our needs, maybe we would tolerate, the cocky, arrogant American, because why not? They're bringing good stuff to us. But that's not how this operates. The rules-based international order, the Bretton Woods system, dollar domination, is all linked to the military-industrial complex because America has defined itself by the military-industrial complex. This is how we are organized from a foreign policy, national security policy, and domestic economic policy, et cetera, is all geared around sustaining the military-industrial complex, which means if you're going to make, your core being about producing weapons, you have to have wars where these weapons can be used. And so our entire model of interaction with the globe has been one where we go out and we create conflicts. This is what we do. We don't solve problems, we create problems so that we can sustain the military industrial complex. And Brics represents the end of that. And this is liberating for Americans. Americans should take advantage of the opportunity to walk away from $1 trillion a year defense budget, walk away from companies that take your taxpayer dollars and only produce weapons that have no benefit for the American people. They're not used to defend us. They're just used to kill people. And when we're not killing people, we give it to other nations to kill people, like the Israelis killing Palestinians, like the Ukrainians killing Russians. That's it. And Brics is saying that's the end of that. That's the end of American hegemony. It's the end of American-led neocolonialism. And it's the end, unfortunately, for the dollar, the end of the dollar. The dollar's a strong currency. I don't think people should understand. There is no single currency out there. And my dogs are agreeing. They think the dollar's a strong currency too. Got to forgive them. One of them just had surgery and is feeling his oats and irritating the others. So hopefully they'll calm down. Nope, he's biting the tail, and there's going to be a fight. But
on the subject, actually, it's on the subject.
Yeah, it's biting the tail. But I apologize. The dogs got me lost. Where was I?
No, but Scott, I want to ask you. Thank you for this, but I want to ask you. I really want to understand the dynamic here. because as it says that this is the relationship between the military and the defense industry. So again, I'm not an expert. I really want to understand this dynamic. So the military, it's one side. Then we have another group which provides the equipment, etc., and services. So within this military group, many times you have mentioned on my channel and other channels that there is, of course, a significant number of very corrupted, high-rank officers, generals, who, I would say, sold their soul. But I want to know, is there a group of military, very high-rank military in the United States that stands for the Republic, stands for the Constitution, and has any saying what's really going on within this collaboration?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I would say that the vast majority of the men and women who join the military, especially as commissioned officers, are honorable people who believe in serving their country, and they can do so in a number of ways. As you go up in rank, you move away from small unit leadership, dealing with individuals, dealing with those problems, and you get into more organizational things. And inevitably, when you're dealing with institutions that are as big as the United States military is, you're dealing with procurement and sustainment efforts. And this is where the corrupting factor comes in. Because to be honest, if we just had a relationship between the military and defense industry, we wouldn't really have a problem. I'm just being honest with you, because what it would be is I'm the guy out in the field, and I'm trying to accomplish something. I would come up with an idea, and then we would sketch it out. We would talk about it with my professionals, how we want to do this. And then we go to defense industry and we say, this is what we need. And defense industry says, okay, we'll build it. And so they build it, and they say, does this accomplish what you need to do? And we can say yes or no. We need to modify it. We need to fix it up a little bit. And there's a purity there, because the defense industry is answering the needs of the military. But now we have to throw in the fact that they can't just say, what do you need? They have to say, what's your budget? How much money do you have? And so what happens is I have to come up with an idea. Then I have to go to Congress, and I have to get the money from Congress. Now, if Congress is pure, Congress would say, have a hearing. Why do you need this? Do you really need this? Are there other solutions? Da 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 da. And they could say, yes, we'll support this, or they could say, no, we can't support that at this time. We believe that your existing capabilities answer the defense requirements of the United States, and because we have civilian leadership of the military, we have to salute smartly. But then what happens is we say the defense industry doesn't like that. They don't like to be told you're not going to buy it, because they don't make any money. So they will get involved. They will lobby Congress for us. And again, as long as they're lobbying Congress based upon my legitimate needs, okay, at the end of the day, if I'm getting the weapon system I need to fight the wars that I have to be prepared to fight, okay, it's doable. But then what happens is the defense industry starts to think it knows better about what I need. You see, I'm out there doing my job, and the defense industry is going to come up and tell Congress, we need newer, better systems. We need to upgrade. We need to do this. And the guys in the bottom of the field are going, well, we don't need that. That's too complicated. If you buy me that piece of equipment, how am I going to maintain it? There's a whole bunch of issues involved here. And then this is where we get the corruptions. The people go up the chain of command. Your colonels, your brigadier generals, your major generals, as they start to become the procurement officers, they're supposed to be solely focused on what's best for the military, what's best for the nation. But they start to also think about what's best for them. By the time you make colonel, you're getting to the point where you could retire. And you'd like to make general first. So you make general, but now you're thinking, I get that second star. But then I have to retire. And my general's pay isn't. I mean, I'm middle class, but he's out there hanging out with the defense industry guys that are taking him into 5-star hotels and wining and dining. He goes, I want some of that. And so they start developing this relationship where the military and the defense industry start working. Now, there's checks and balances in place. You're not supposed to be able to, profit directly. But if you're told that when you retire, you go right through the revolving door into into a vice president see in a defense industry thing, making 3 times your salary. Now you're going to be on a board making an additional salary. You're going to be set for life, making a lot of money. But you can only make your money if you make the defense industry happy, if you make that particular company happy. So now we have a whole different dynamic in play here, where there are expectations in the military as you rise up the chain of command that once you finish commanding troops, it's your time to get yours. And now we have the defense industry. We have this relationship, the lobbying of Congress. Congress, of course, if I'm going to build a bomber, and that's going to be a lot of money to build this bomber, and I build it in one factory in Texas, that makes the Texas congressman very happy, especially if it's in his district. And the Texas senators, very happy. You know who's not happy? The rest of Congress. So what they say is, no, you got to break this up. You can only you have to produce some parts here, some parts here, some parts here. So you have to spread the money out. That's inefficient as hell, but we do that anyways. We spread all this out there, then we bring it together, we assemble it in one place. And so now we have jobs linked to this. Jobs is tax base. It's the health of the local economy. So sustainment of this becomes essential. What happens when we're done building that bomber? Because as we all know, bombers get outdated. Well, you need a replacement bomber. You can't let it out to a competitor because then this factory closes down, those jobs go away. And so the whole idea is to keep the jobs going. And one way they keep the jobs going is once they get a contract, they never want to let the contract go. And so instead of, again, now I'm the young guy at the bottom saying, hey, I need a can of Diet Coke that when I open it and I take my drink, I get the refreshing pause that matters. And they go, okay, we're gonna pay, we're gonna charge you $1.50 for that, and it's gonna take us 1.5 years. All right, let's get going. About a year in, they're gonna go, yeah, the pop top that you have, we got to modify that a little bit. So it's going to add another 6 months to it. And now it's going to cost you $2. I really want that Diet Coke. So, yep. Okay. Congress says yes. Well, Congress is going to say yes because that's more money for them. That lengthens the contract. That's jobs. That's taxes. And they will take this contract. Next thing you know, it's going to take 6 years to produce a can of Diet Coke. And by the time they get it out, it's not going to be cold. It's going to be warm. It's not going to refresh. It's going to be stale. But people made money. It doesn't answer my requirements anymore, but they made money. And then they'll continue to produce it, even though I'm not asking for it. If I say, I don't need this anymore, I'm drinking something else now, they're going to say, well, we have to keep the production line open. So Congress will insert into the budget a requirement to produce the bare minimum necessary to keep all the jobs in place. So they're going to be producing Diet Coke. It's going to cost you a fortune, and you don't want it. We do that with aircraft all the time. The U.S. Air Force was buying A-7, fighters long after the Air Force said we don't want them anymore. They just kept producing them because Congress didn't want to shut down the production line. And that's where we're at. Look at the ballistic missiles right now. We're talking about replacing the Minuteman III with something they call the Sentinel, the ground-launched ballistic missile deterrent. Congress, it got so bad in the defense budget that Congress passed a law that said that there has to be mandatory reviews of all contracts, and when the contract exceeds a certain threshold and cost overruns in a given period of time, you have to put a pause on the contract and review it. When the Sentinel came out, you can go back and look at my interviews given at the time. I said they're talking, $150 billion. So this is a $1 trillion plus system. By the time they finish, this is going to cost the American public $1 trillion. It's not going to work, and it's going to take forever to get fielded. Everybody's like, no, Scott, that's not going to happen. Well, the Sentinel started. Within 6 months, they did it. It was, I forget the cost overrun, up to around 20%. They had to shut it down, go back and redesign the whole thing, start from scratch. They will never produce this missile because we don't know how to produce things anymore. All we know how to do is overcharge the American public, extend contracts, keep expensive engineers employed to look at things that the military doesn't. We need a missile that when we push the button, it pops out of the ground, flies to the target, and hits the target. All right, but all these companies are going to give us bells and whistles and things that we don't need, and it's going to cost us a fortune. We can't afford it. But like I said, by the time this is done, we're going to be 10 years down the road. We'll spend $1 trillion, and we still won't have a missile that works. That's the military-industrial complex in a nutshell.
Thank you, Scott. Please take a little break because now I'm going to read you something that I really want to ask you about. This is a good segue to this question. I think that's why I've asked you about the military in the United States. Let's start with this. An executive order number 13818 signed on December 20th, 2017. By the Executive Order 13818, the President declared a national emergency with respect to serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world, and pursuant, if I mispronounce, apologies, to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, took related steps to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. We close this. We have an interview that Trump gave, and I want everyone now to just take a deep breath and namaste, whatever is your preference. I don't know if anyone here actually even thinks about Kamala, but what I'm saying, if you hate Trump, just take a deep breath. Here is the interview in which, with Maria Bartolomo, I think that's how I would say her name, in which he said, and I 100% agree with this, that the true enemy is within, is much more dangerous than is from outside. And you have a lot of very sick radical lunatics that should be easily handled by the National Guard or, if necessary, by the military. Why I want to ask you this, Scott, because I know how much, and you show this over and over again, you love your country. You are a true patriot. Everyone says it all the time. We see it. It's your soul. It's your heart. You care for the United States. We are approaching a very important day when the election will take place. Do you think that there is a military that will stand for this nation if there is a turmoil, and that is on a good side, let's put it this way? And do you think that he can actually, when he is the winner, because I believe he will win this election, is he able to use this even before being sworn in January? I know it's a very loaded question, but I'm sure you understand where I'm going with this. That good military people, are they going to be put into action? What do you think about
it? The U.S. military, federal military forces, have no role to play whatsoever in domestic political affairs of the United States of America. It's unconstitutional for them to be involved. And if they received an order to interfere in a way that violated the constitutional rights of American citizens, they would be wrong. I know it's tempting to talk about, if BLM comes in and starts burning cities, and if there's riots in the streets, and if the progressives do this and that and the other thing, bring in the military. That's the end of America. The second the military gets involved in that, we're no longer the United States of America. We're a military dictatorship. We're a military junta. And I would hope that the vast majority of the men and women who wear the uniform of the United States would view any orders given that required them to interfere in a manner which infringed on the civil liberties and constitutional rights of American citizens, would view that order as unconstitutional and refuse to obey it. there are things, there are times when we do federalize troops. We've seen it throughout history. But it has to be very limited in scope, et cetera. And it always ends up bad. You do not want American soldiers pulling the triggers on American guns paid for by the American taxpayers, shooting bullets downrange that hit American taxpayers. That's just not how this system works. You know, we have the National Guard. You can call forth the National Guard in certain situations, but again, we have to be careful. Do we really want Kent State replayed over and over again, where we have, you know, there's a lot of people out there believing things I don't like, you know, and I'm sure I support causes that a lot of people don't like, but that's my right, and it's their right. In the United States, so long as you're not seeking to violently overthrow the Constitution of the United States of America or infringe on the constitutional liberties of and rights of American citizens, you know, you have a right to say what you want. You have a right to associate with whom you want. You have a right to assemble and carry out peaceful demonstrations. When you start breaking the law, that becomes a law enforcement issue. And that's where the state police come in. That's where the FBI can come in. That's where, you know, duly mandated law enforcement comes in. You don't want the military doing law enforcement. You really don't. We don't do law enforcement. We kill people. That's it. Where, you know, you don't want a private who has gone through the bayonet course and is, you know, dreaming of closing with and destroying the enemy through firepower and maneuver, to wake up one morning and be told the enemy is the American people. There's no checks and balances. He's a killing machine, and now you're going to unleash him on the American people. No, hell no. And it could lead to a civil war, because I can tell you that there will be a significant number of American service members who will actually refuse to do that. And then we could get a situation where we have force on force. We don't want that. That's the end of this country. I have faith that whatever problems will manifest themselves because of this election, and I'm sure there will be problems, that they'll be handled peacefully and constitutionally. It may be ugly, but I do believe that we will see the peaceful transfer of power again. And the best advice I could give to anybody in the military is keep the hell out of politics. If you're the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the president gives you an unlawful order, you tell him that's an unlawful order. I can't obey that order. And if the president relieves him, then the deputy comes up and says the same thing, and it goes down the chain of command. You cannot implement orders that are unconstitutional, and using the military to interfere in American politics or even American law enforcement. That's why we have the Posse Comitatus Act. We don't allow the U.S. military to be directly involved in law enforcement activities. So I just think there's no place for the U.S. military in politics. Our job is to obey the orders that are faithfully and constitutionally given to us by our chain of command, and that's it. And that chain of command may be Republican, that chain of command may be Democratic, that chain of command may be green, maybe it doesn't matter. Whatever the American people decide who's going to be in that senior executive spot, that's the person that issues the orders that the military obeys, but they have to be constitutional orders. They can't be orders that ask the military to do things that the Constitution doesn't permit.
Thank you so much. I don't want to keep you too long today. Actually, the audience is concerned about your health, so
no, that's okay. I'm here.
Scott, they really care. You know, they love you. Since you mentioned the green person or whatever color, you know, I think there will be a mental breakdown, and a lot of people will be, you know, they already have this going on now in Europe too. You know, humans that act like dogs and all sorts of stuff. So I think just get ready there, people, because you're going to see very strange things. I don't know how they push people to this point that they become like different creatures. But Scott, let's move to Ukraine topic. So the situation is, this is the final countdown, I think. It doesn't look good. I don't think anything can really help at this point. From TASS today, I found an article. A retired colonel of the security service of Ukraine, Oleg Starikov, said that solving the problems that they have now in Ukraine on the front line emerged on the line of contact requires resources and motivated soldiers who are in a short supply in the Ukrainian army. Another article I found that was talking about Ukraine's population that has decreased by more than 10 million people from 2022. This is crazy. It's just crazy. And I want to ask you, at this moment, what do you estimate is the number of Ukrainian soldiers that have been killed or died during this operation, and how many Russian soldiers as well?
There's a lot of speculation that goes into numbers like this, and you always open yourself up to to be criticized. But it's your question. I'll do my best to answer it. I think that there is fairly well-sourced information that shows that over 500,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed. But the problem with that number is that there's a large number of Ukrainian soldiers who are missing, who haven't been counted properly, etc. That would have to be added on to that. And that number could go as high as 250,000 additional troops. So you're looking at, up to 750,000 dead. That's a high number. But realistically, we're talking about the depletion of the Ukrainian manpower pool is where we're at. Putin in the past has spoken about 10-to-1 casualty ratios, 7-to-1, in some cases 5-to-1, depending on what part of the conflict the phase of it is. The thing about counting Russian numbers, though, is that you have the Ministry of Defense numbers, but those numbers aren't going to include, for instance, casualties incurred by Wagner and other private military companies in the period when they weren't part of the Ministry of Defense. Those numbers won't include the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Armies when they weren't part of the Russian military. And there's a whole bunch of volunteer forces that are operating under the umbrella of the Russian Ministry of Defense. There's also ministry, the Rosguard, Minister of Interior forces that are involved. And so, the Russian Defense Ministry may publish a number that suggests that, maybe they've suffered 70,000 dead. But that's not the true number. The true number of Russian dead is probably between 100 and 120,000 dead. That's a hell of a lot of people. I just want to remind people that it took America 10 years in Vietnam to kill 58,000 of us. And here the Russians in 2.5 years, we're talking 120,000 dead. The Ukrainians, 750,000 dead. And that doesn't add in the wounded. The Ukrainian wounded numbers, the ratio might be a little bit reduced, meaning that normally you could be looking at 3-4 wounded for every dead. I don't think that that's the case with the Ukrainians, because I think a lot of the reasons why they have dead is that they've lost control of the battlefield and they're forced to abandon heavily wounded people that they couldn't, that if they'd been evacuated, they might have survived. So a lot of people are left to die on the battlefield, which is why these numbers are quite high. But when you throw in the wounded and everything, we're talking between 1.5 and 2 million Ukrainian casualties. And with the Russians, the Russians going to be a little bit higher, because the Russians, for the most part, are able to successfully evacuate their wounded, and you're looking at higher survival rates. So, with the Russians, we could be looking at 4 or 5, a 4 or 5 factor to 1. So if you have 120,000 times 4, that's 480,000. So the Russians, you're looking at just below 1 million to just a little bit more than 1 million total casualties. Million. This ain't a cheap war. This is a very expensive war. Russia's paid a heavy, heavy price. Ukrainians have paid an even heavier price. And this is something that I think the whole world needs to reflect on, especially, you hear NATO, talking about building up, hundreds of thousands of strong forces. Understand, if NATO wants to go from, build 300 to 500,000, look at the casualties I'm talking about. This military NATO is building up can't sustain itself on the battlefield. If it got involved in a shooting war with Russia that has the same level of intensity, NATO would have to replicate that army 4 or 5 times. And they're going to have problems just recruiting for one time. So, anybody who's wishing war as a solution to these problems, think again. NATO can't afford a war against Russia. Russia can't afford to continue a war against NATO. I know NATO keeps talking about, Russia's going to move on and do all this stuff. Russia wants this war to end. This has been a very expensive war for Russia. But the thing about the price that Russia's paid is that they're not going to take a shortcut. Once you've invested this much into it, that means that Russia will ensure that the job is done the way Russia wants the job to be done, because they don't want to have to come back and do it again. And so, there's where we are. The smart players out there would take a look at the inevitability of a decisive Russian victory and seek to mitigate that by engaging with the Russians early to provide Russia with solutions to the problems it's identified that still, provide the West something, an intact Ukraine, a Ukraine that retains Odessa, Kharkov, something of that nature. Because if they continue to push the Russians, you're going to get nothing. There's a Ukrainian brigade commander that was interviewed the other day, and he said, they keep telling us to go back to the 1991 borders, meaning to push the Russians back to the borders, retake Crimea, etc. He says, well, we're going to go back to the 1991 borders, but we're going the wrong way, meaning that Russia's going to push Ukraine, and there will be no Ukraine left. So, this is where we're going. I don't think Russia's going to do too much, to be honest, because, again, all the people that are sitting there screaming Odessa and screaming Kharkov, put a body figure. Tell me how many Russians you're willing to lose, because it ain't going to be free. It's not going to be cheap. It's going to be bloody. It's going to take time, and it's going to cost you a lot of manpower and a lot of resources. I think the Russian government will be satisfied with ending the war, holding on to the territories that currently are constitutionally part of Russia, and then ensuring that Ukraine is not part of NATO, demilitarized, denazified. But I don't see I understand the logic, and I support the logic of Odessa becoming Russian territory. And who knows, maybe it will be. But the idea that this is an easy decision for the Russian government to make, they met in Brics, and a key part of Brics was to bring this war in Ukraine to an end. And Brics says this war has to come to an end because we stand for stability, we stand for peace, we stand for all this. They're not looking for an escalation. And I think China, and I'm no expert on lip reading, especially when it's done in Chinese and such. But there's an interesting clip where Xi Jinping and Putin are having a very intense discussion. They ended up smiling and shaking hands, but this wasn't hey, coming over for a beer tonight kind of discussion. This was Xi Jinping, I think, laying the law down, saying this war has to end. We have to find a way out of this war. We're not asking you to lose the war. We're not asking you to surrender. But we are saying this war has to end. It needs to come to an end. And I think that's the consensus for the world. Russia has won this war. And Russia, I think people will support Russia holding on to the territories and get treaties that lock that in and protect Russia, end sanctions, etc. They will support a neutral Ukraine. But I don't think the world's going to support. I don't think Brics is going to support a Russian war with Ukraine that goes on forever and is about territorial acquisition. I don't think that. And I think Russia's invested too much time and effort into making Brics a success than to throw it all away on a Ukrainian battlefield.
Thank you, Scott. This is very interesting what you said. You actually answered my next question about Odessa, so thank you for that. Are you okay to continue a little bit more on your? I don't want to, take advantage of the situation. There is a question.
It is what it is. So I'm here. You got me. Let's go.
Thank you. I want to really address this question from my side first, because since it's addressing Polish people, I think I know quite a lot. Hi, Anya and Scott. Wonder, are enough Polish people waking up to the reality in Ukraine, or is Russophobia blinding people to the truth? So let me tell you this. At this point, Polish people, and of course, I don't speak for every single citizen of Poland, but majority of Polish people absolutely does not want to be engaged in any conflict with Ukraine. They see through the BS. They don't want to participate in this, and they don't want to be sent nowhere for no reason. They know what's going on, okay? Now, this is one side of the story, which actually, it's a good, let's focus on this. Russophobia, it's another side. Yes, it still exists, but the resentment and unwillingness to be a cannon fodder for nothing is much stronger at this point than the Russophobia. So they focus on the aspect, I'm not going anywhere, okay? Which is a great approach. How this will be executed, I don't think it's gonna happen, but who knows what they're gonna do. But Scott, I think this was mainly to me, this question. But I want to ask you now about Middle East. Two things, and then we will end this live stream. Very simple question. Who has the most saying in any conflict in the Middle East region?
The most saying, the most what?
Saying, the most saying, the most influence. Who has the most saying in any going on conflict? Doesn't matter who with who. Who has the most impact and power and impact in that region?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is the United States. We wield a combination of economic power, political power. We have legacy power, based upon just the way things have been, the rules-based international order, et cetera, our long-standing relationship with Israel, the fact that we have played such an important part in Israeli-Palestinian negotiations leading up to the current thing. Camp David, go back to Camp David and everything that's happened in between. So the United States is the one who has the ability to impose its will on a Middle East problem. But I think we have to understand that a lot of the influence that we have today is influence that comes only because people allow this to take place. We've lost the ability to impose our will. For instance, back in 1990, 1991, when Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Kuwait, the United States was able to build a multinational coalition, go to the United Nations, get a Chapter 7 resolution authorizing military force to liberate Kuwait, deploy 750,000 troops into the region, and win a war against the world's fourth largest army in a very short period of time. We can't do that today. So there's a difference between the power we used to have and the power we have today. A lot of the power that we have today is because people feel an obligation to listen to us. They're afraid of the consequences of not listening to us. But the other thing is, let's again go back to the Gulf War, 1990, 1991. The role that Iran played, it was a significant role. I remember as we watched, at the end of the Gulf War, we were watching the Iranians build up their forces opposite of Basra, and we're like, oh my God, what if the Iranians, decide now's the time to come in and capture Basra and make their own move, and there were contingency plans drawn up, just saying the way it was. Fortunately, it didn't happen. And when they did come in, they helped with a Shia revolt that we failed to support, and that's another can of worms. But my point is, Iran then and Iran today are two totally different Irans. Iran has much more influence right now, and we can't we can't discredit the role that Iran plays, and the fact again that a lot of what Iran does is based upon the legacy of the United States as opposed to the reality of the United States. There's a lot of hesitation on the part of Iran because just historically you didn't confront the Americans directly. That was always something you didn't do because America would make you pay a very heavy price. But now when you're looking at the decline of empire, the Iranians and their proxies can get away with things. The Ansarallah and the Houthi are winning a naval conflict against the United States in the Red Sea. Unimaginable, the scenario. If again in 19, I just remember the Gulf War because I was in Schwarzkopf's headquarters, so I was aware of what was going on. The Saudis were very nervous because we kept asking the Saudis to, put their troops up there and help us create this Gulf Arab coalition force. The Saudis were very nervous about pulling their troops off of the Yemeni border because Yemen was an ally of Iraq, and the fear was that if they pull their forces, the Yemenis could attack and reach Riyadh before we'd be able to adjust. There was those concerns, but once you had forces in place, you could hold Yemen in check. Ansarallah today can't be checked. They're a power that operates with almost total disregard for the will of the United States. It's changing. And Iran's to the point right now where they're not going to allow the United States to push them around, intimidate them, bully them. Remember, in the lead up to the Gulf War, we had an undeclared war with Iran where we were sinking their ships, attacking their oil things. There was the tragedy of shooting down the Iranian airliner. So we had this conflict with Iran. Today, if we tried to pull any of that, Iranian missiles would rain death and destruction down on American military installations in the region and have no protection from these missiles. So, even though I say that America has this influence today, if you want to talk about real influence, I think Iran has far more capabilities to impose its will on the region than the United States does. We get away with a lot because, for instance, Saudi Arabia still listens to us. I have to. There was a photograph, an interesting photograph. Tony Blinken's in Saudi Arabia right now, and Saudi Arabia was supposed to send a delegation to the Brics. MBS promised Lavrov that he would go, and then he pulled out. He stayed. The United States has been putting a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia not to become, part of the Brics community. There's a photograph of Blinken meeting with that. Normally, when you have, an American of that stature, you'll have an American flag in the background. There's no American flag in the background, just a Saudi flag. I'm curious as to why this is. I know he's not a head of state, and maybe Saudi Arabia is making a protocol judgment, but we'll see what happens. I need to continue to read up on the aftermath of Brics and what was achieved there. But to get to your question, I think today you're going to see the Iranians actually have a lot more influence on the region than the United States does.
Scott, thank you. And can I just say that President of Brazil, right? This whole situation, President of Brazil with his head injury that prevented him apparently to attend. I think no coincidence here. So they are trying from every angle to weaken something that just cannot be stopped. And I really don't want to keep you any much longer today, even though I had more questions. But
no, ask your questions. I'm here. You might as well.
Okay, I will ask one more, and this is from someone who is again just.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, please.
Just to AD in your chat. I know I'm not supposed to be reading the chat. But you're very critical of my analysis, and I respect that. Everybody's allowed to be critical of my analysis about Russian decision making, etc. Are you Russian, and are you linked with Russian decision makers? What is the basis of this? Or are you just blowing smoke out of your bottom? I'm just curious because you're very assertive in the chat, and the implications you actually know what you're talking about. So I know where my sources of information are. I know where my analytical foundation comes from. I'm comfortable with it, but I'd be interested to find out what AD is. But anyways, I've given him far too much. Go ahead. I'm in a bad mood this morning because I don't feel good, so I should probably just turn off the chat and not do it because I'm in a very combative mood.
Thank you,
Okay,
Scott.
your
No,
turn.
please don't read. It's my job to read the chat. I haven't seen this. So, about Iran. So when I'm watching this unfolding now, I see there is this narrative, and I really want to be objective because I don't know. I never been to Iran. I don't know, and I don't think I know anyone from Iran. So I see there is a lot of criticism about the government in Iran, and I see this on many channels that talk about how oppressive it is, how totalitarian it is, and how people are not happy with it. But on the other side, on the flip side, right, then I see this movement there that is very much like united, and there are people that love the country. But this now you question everything. So I don't know how much this is genuine and it comes from true love and sense of unity, or it's something forced upon those people. And this is my question here. I know it's a very loaded question also, but how really this government is as far as the freedom of citizens, treating the citizens the right way? Is it the illusion created for people to then liberate the country, like it was with Iraq, wasn't it? So this is my last question. I promise no more questions.
No, you can always ask questions. The old saying is the only stupid question is the question you don't ask. So, if you have questions, ask. Look, I've been to Iran. I had the privilege of traveling to Iran back in 2000, I think 7, right after Ahmadinejad came in as the president. Of course, he was a very conservative president. The West disliked him tremendously, and there was a lot of talk about how repressive Iran was, etc. I land at the airport in Iran, and it's interesting. It's an interesting phenomena. I flew in via Istanbul, and when you get on the airplane in Istanbul, everybody's in their Western clothes, and they're all looking, hair out and all this kind of stuff. But as we approach Iranian airspace, the word comes out, and you see the women go to the restrooms, and then they come out fully, have their hijabs on, and and all that, and they cleaned up, and then they enter society. They weren't sad though. I didn't see that they were happy to be home. I just think it was the reality of their life. When I landed at the time, the United States had just changed the rules about how we were fingerprinting people from Iran, etc. And so I was one of the first Americans to arrive in Tehran after we began fingerprinting. And so I was met by these Revolutionary Guard guys, and they're like, "We got to fingerprint you." And I'm like, "I understand." They're like, "We don't know why we got to fingerprint you. We aren't even really quite sure how we're going to do it, but by God, we're going to get it done." And it took a while. They were almost embarrassed, and they were very polite. But we went through the whole process. So I'm thinking, this is what it's going to be like. This is what Iran's going to be like. I'm going to have this constant, presence with me. And then they released me. I get my bags, and they didn't go through my bags. They just didn't care. Maybe they already had gone through my bags. I don't know. But they let me go. I go out and I hail a taxi cab. Cab's there. Where do you want to go? Gave my hotel. Off we go. Now, I've spent a lifetime in training doing counter surveillance and looking for tails and everything. And so I'm waiting to see, the cars peel off and follow me and all that stuff. Nah. The entire time in Iran, they knew the hotel I was at. They knew that. I'm sure they had my room bugged. I don't care. But I could go anywhere I wanted. I was supposed to do a lot of meetings with the Iranian government. And I had to go register as somebody in the press, and then they assigned me an official Iranian handler because there's specific interviews I wanted done, etc. But I had time off too because their bureaucracy. I was promised a whole bunch of things by the Iranian ambassador at the United Nations, all these meetings. And I got there and they're like, we haven't heard anything about that. So you have to wait. We're going to check. So I hired a tour guide, and she came in and she just took me all over Iran, all over Tehran. We got out, we went towards Qom. We went out towards, there's a right next to the Natanz facility. There's an ancient Iranian city there with a lot of ruins. We went there. I mean, just a wonderful lady, and the tours she offered were fantastic. The people I met were great. I walked the cities. I went to the bazaar. A couple funny encounters. I was walking and this one guy was following me. And I'm like, oh, there it is. There's the guy following me. But I'm looking, but I said, he's a little too obvious. Normally even when they're goons, they pretend not to be trying to follow, but he is staring right at me, staring me down. And he gets closer and closer. And I'm like, good Lord, what's going to happen here? And he comes up to me, he goes, are you Scott Ritter? I said, yes. And he goes, why are you here? I said, well, I just came here to learn things. He goes, are you going to speak to the Iranian parliament? And I said, I don't think so. I mean, I've put in a request, but he goes, please don't. And I said, why? And he goes, because you spoke to the Iraqi parliament, and right after that, the United States invaded Iraq. And we're afraid, my friends and I are afraid that you're here to cause trouble and start a war again. I'm like, no, it's not like that at all. But the thing is, they're all very much tuned in. These are very intelligent people. The guy I had as my official guide is a Revolutionary Guard guy. When the revolution started in 78, 79, he was a teenager and he joined the Revolutionary Guard. He's one of the street fighters in Tehran. He admits that he was involved in the fighting with the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Khalq. It got very ugly. Then he went up to Kurdistan and suppressed that. Very ugly. Then he fought in the Iran-Iraq war. But we went to a restaurant and he said, I have some colleagues that want to talk to you. Would you mind having a conversation with them? I said, sure, why not? And so he waved, and they were already waiting there at the hotel or at the restaurant. And three guys came over, and they were members of the Revolutionary Guard Command's intelligence branch of the American department. And they just wanted to have talk about the United States and things like that. But I interrogated them more than they interrogated me. And they admitted to a lot of things. I mean, because I said, how's relationships with the West? You guys are hardcore. And they said, well, two of them had actually gone overseas in the 1980s to track down opposition leaders and probably assassinate them. When they admitted that, I said, so you are terrorists? And they said, well, under your books, yeah, we would be terrorists. For us, we view ourselves as freedom fighters, but by your laws, yeah, we understand that. He said, but we came back and unanimously we approached our leadership and we said, we don't want to be at war with the West. He said, there's like walking through Berlin. He said, there's all sorts of problems. There's prostitution, there's drugs, there's alcohol, things that we don't like. But he said, but it works. The system works, the economy works, society works, and Iran needs to capture that. And so even within the conservative segments of Iranian society, there was a debate going on about the need to reform Iran. This is in 2007. And I've had conversations with Iranians since then, and I hope to be able to go back to Iran if I ever get my passport back. But to continue this conversation, Iran, when people think of the Shia faith, or they think of Islam, they think of conservative, Sharia law and things of that nature. But Iran, the Shia faith actually is far more flexible than the West understands. In order to become an Ayatollah, a senior religious figure, you have to study for, sometimes 30 to 40 years of intense study. You have to learn the Quran, you have to learn interpretations. They have the hadiths. You got to learn this. You got to learn how to apply them. And then when you're ready, you write something. I used to know what it was called, the Tawfiq or something of that nature. But it's basically your PhD thesis, and it basically says how the person writing it chooses to interpret an aspect of modern society as it relates to Islam. And it could be dancing, it could be music, it could be driving, it could be anything. And you publish that. And then your job is, once you release it, you people will read it, and can you attract a congregation? Can you attract a marja? Um, and if you can't, you're a failed Ayatollah. You go back to being a minor guy. You don't get to move on. And the reason why I bring this up is that the very essence of the Shia faith as practiced in Iran is based upon the faith adapting to the modern realities of the present moment. And so Iran is a nation that's constantly in a mode of adapting, betterment. They're not trapped in the past, and that's something that the West misunderstands. We keep thinking that the Ayatollahs and everybody are trying to trap Iran in the past of the medieval. Why do you think they allowed this president to get elected at this point in time? First of all, it was the will of the people that got him elected, but they could have blocked him. They easily could have blocked him, but the Guardian Council and the Expediency Discernment Council and the supreme leader understood that within the Iranian society there is a great push for reform, especially after the death of that Kurdish girl in September of 2023, Masha, I think her name was. And the unrest that took place after that, there's a recognition that society isn't going to put up with morality police imposing their wills, that the hijab law has to be reviewed. Now, this isn't going to happen rashly. They're not going to just jump out and do things, but there is a gradual sense of reform constantly inside the religious establishment in Iran. And that's something that I think that we in the West, we don't understand and we don't respect. And because of this, the Iranian people, by and large, support the Islamic Republic. I think things go through cycles, and I think because of the economic hardships that sanctions brought in, et cetera, that you were starting to get people who were questioning the viability of the Islamic Republic, questioning the viability of a strategy of confrontation with the West and things of that nature. And so, more people were becoming indifferent to it. And you saw that with voter turnout. One of the things that the Iranian regime has always said, or the Iranian government, is that, and this dates back to Ayatollah Khomeini, he said, the most important thing is the number of people who come out to vote, because your participation in the vote is in and of itself a vote in favor of the Islamic Republic. We want you to come out. And they had suppressed voter turnout on this election. Now, the interesting thing is in the first round of the presidential elections, voter turnout was suppressed because many people didn't believe that the regime the theocracy would allow the moderate Iranian presidential candidate, whose name I literally Pezeshkian or something. I apologize. It's escaping my mind. But they didn't think that he would be allowed to progress. And suddenly he's there, and they're saying, whoa, wait a minute. We actually could vote in a moderate. And you saw the second round, more people came out, and he won. And I think there's some excitement back in the within Iran now about the potential reform. It's tough now because they're having this conflict with Israel and things of that nature. But I think the other thing is that the unrest that took place in September, a lot of it, was triggered by the CIA, by the Mossad, by other intelligence organizations that use their influence in these opposition groups to get them to rise up. And it's a lot like the Tet Offensive in 1968, where the Viet Cong came out of the woodwork to attack, and it was very violent. But at the end of it, it broke the back of the Viet Cong. It was very bad. Fortunately for the Viet Cong, they had the North Vietnamese were able to back them up. But these opposition groups committed to the violent overthrow. I remember talking to President Raisi at the time in New York, and he talked about the seriousness of what happened there. That it was generally seen by the Iranian government as an existential crisis. That this was a serious threat that they were facing, and they defeated it. So I don't think there's an appetite in Iran right now for revolution, for violent overthrow. and for all this kind of stuff. I think what there's an appetite in Iran right now is for reform that'll be done constitutionally. And if you take that reform and you couple it with the economic potential and benefits that are going to be accrued through Brics membership, I think you're seeing that the Islamic Republic, the totality of it is going to become even stronger going forward.
Scott, immensely grateful for your time today. Before we end, I just want to say I read this today before we connected from Brics. Still, China's President Xi commits to deeper cooperation with Iran amid Mid-East conflict. So there you have it, everyone. We see how this goes. Because if they do something with Iran and China is behind Iran, that's I don't want to. Yeah, let's not visualize this at this point because this is going to go deeper and deeper. Scott.
Well, I heard, just so on that note, I heard good news today if the report's true. But according to Israeli media, the Israeli government has put the pause on the on attacking Iran because of those intelligence leaks. I just published an article yesterday that said, look, it's not an attack plan, but anybody who's a military expert reading this can pretty much say exactly how Israel's going to attack and what Israel's going to attack based upon the intelligence contained in there. And I put out a scenario. And the Israeli government's not stupid, because if I can do it, the Iranians can do it. And they're setting themselves up for a disaster if they were to attack. So I think the Israelis have hit the pause button. And this is a good thing, because now if diplomacy can come in and prevent a broader war, that's a good thing. And it helps to have China and Russia and the weight of Brics coming down and saying no, because Israel, is gradually recognizing that it's alienated the global South, and the global South now has a voice through Brics that resonates on the international stage. So that's, I guess, one brief, sparkle of good news.
So thank you, Scott, and thank you, Brics. I want to say again, big thank you. I know you're not feeling well. Actually, I didn't know it, everyone, before we connected. We just jumped into the live stream, and then I realized that Scott is sick, which this probably, I would say, let's just move it for another day. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure, I know I'm pushing this like pina colada, but this is really, really great book. And you know what? Let's really hope this story will be here, but let's finish this conflict already, because I remember how many times when I was in Russia, Scott, in Moscow, how many people were telling me, we just want this to end. We just want this to stop. It's about time, and everyone is suffering, Every side is suffering. Europe is suffering. US taxpayers are suffering. It's about time to end this.
When you write a book, it's always, especially a book that deals with current affairs, it's always a gamble. Because, to give you an example, the first book I wrote with Clarity Press was supposed to be about the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action Iran nuclear deal. And the dogs are obviously not happy. But the point is, I wrote the book, but before it went to print, Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal. So I had to rewrite the book literally in a span of a month and a half to make it relevant. And it was a gamble. The book is great, but it missed that window, and nobody cared about the JCPOA once Trump pulled out. We wrote this book, and it was a gamble. It's a moving target, the Ukrainian conflict. Anya, we hit a home run. This book is more relevant today than it was at the time we wrote it. If people are talking about Zelensky's peace plan, the potential conflict, the worry about, what's going on between Russia and NATO and all this kind of stuff, we answered every question in this book. I'm very proud of this effort. The quality of your questions and your ability to elicit answers from me, we captured it perfectly. You picked brilliant questions. We put it together in a compelling, chronology that creates a great narrative. But it's short, but it's empowering. If this is literally, if you're wondering, what's going on in Ukraine right now, buy this book, borrow this book, buy it because it helps Anya get her make her dreams come true. But this book is a vehicle of empowerment.
Scott, I am immensely grateful. But one more thing, as I promised, on your website there is an event that you've mentioned that's going to take place soon. And you're going to sign those books if you have any with you? Or if people bring their own, are you going to be able to sign it? When is this event, by the way, and where is it?
The event's Sunday in New York City. It's a brunch that's taking place. If you go to scottritter.com, at the top, you'll be able to get to the event page. And if you want to come, you can buy tickets. It's at the Tudor City Steakhouse right across from the United Nations, a world-class venue. You're going to get
in Manhattan, in New York City.
It's right across from the United Nations, yeah, in New York City.
I know where it is. It's a hotel right across there.
No, it's literally on the other side. It's Tudor City, so that hotel, if you go literally a half a block west of that, it's a raise. You have to go up the stairs, and then literally you'll be right there. But you're going to get this great this great meal in a beautiful form. But you're going to get 3 panels. We're putting together 3 panels. One panel is on the danger of nuclear war. You'll have people like Larry Wilkerson there, Dennis Fritz, myself, and others participate in that panel. We'll have a panel on the assault on free speech. Danny Haifong is going to be on the nuclear war danger. Judge Napolitano is going to moderate a free speech panel that has Jimmy Dore and other proponents of free speech there. And then Jose Vega, who's a candidate for Congress, is going to moderate a panel on saving democracy. You're going to get 3 world-class panels, and I mean world-class. These are top of the notch, some of the best speakers out there, for $100. You can buy the ticket, online. They're going fast, but if they're not all gone, help them go, help them all go. But I've made it so that any of the speakers who have books can bring books, and the books can be sold. If you have your own book, bring it. I'll sign it, and I'm sure that the others will too. I know that I'm going to be bringing copies of Covering Ukraine, of Disarmament at the Time of Perestroika, and Scorpion King, and I will make sure that they're all signed and personalized if that's what you want. I know Dennis Fritz is bringing bringing copies of his book, and some others might as well. So we'll have a table there where you can buy the books and we'll sign them.
Fantastic, Scott. Thank you so much. Make sure to take care of your health before this event because you have 2 days to go. Thank you everyone for watching. The link to scottritter.com is right down below the live stream, and also the link to purchase our book as well, and other platforms if you choose to support me. There are too. Thank you guys. Make sure to hit the like before you go. It's free of charge and it helps with the algorithm. And yeah, Scott, thank you for your time today. And we wish you all, on behalf of my audience, good health, especially for this coming event. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.